Hello, everyone. I am the Storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now, get comfortable and relax. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me, something I can't explain. It started innocently enough. I was at a pawn shop, one of those places you find tucked away in some dark corner of the city. The air inside was thick, carrying the musty scent of old furniture, forgotten trinkets, and a history that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I loved browsing through pawn shops. There was always something strange or unusual hiding in every corner, something that seemed to tell a story if you looked long enough. It was there in the back of the shop, under a dusty shelf filled with half-broken radios and old VHS tapes, that I saw it. An old game console. You know, the kind you only hear about in stories, the ones that are no longer sold in stores. It had a worn, faded label, the kind of label that looks like it had been through years of use. But what caught my attention wasn't just the console itself, it was the way it seemed to call to me, like something was pulling me toward it, something I couldn't quite explain. I stepped closer, my fingers lightly grazing the edge of the console. The feeling was strange, like a tiny electric shock running through me. I knew it was just an old game console, but something felt different about it. The more I looked at it, the more I couldn't shake the sensation that this was no ordinary item. It was as if it was meant for me, as if it had been waiting all this time for someone like me to find it. I turned to the shopkeeper, a wiry old man who was busy sorting through a box of old books behind the counter. He caught my gaze and gave a slight nod as if he knew what I was about to ask. "Don't you want to know the price first?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. I shook my head. "I just want to know about this console. How much is it?" The man hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking toward the console as though he wasn't sure whether to say anything. Finally, he spoke. $20. But I'd be careful if I were you. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he meant. Careful? It's just an old game console, right? The man's eyes darted around, checking the room as though he was afraid someone might overhear. There's a reputation attached to that console. People say it's cursed, not just some ordinary toy. It's been in the shop for years, and I've never been able to get rid of it. I don't know why, but something about it doesn't sit right. I chuckled, thinking it was some sort of gimmick to make the sale more intriguing. Cursed? Come on, it's just an old game system. He shook his head, looking serious now. You don't have to believe me, but I'd be careful. Don't play it too long. Trust me, I've seen some strange things happen. I was curious, but I didn't take him seriously. It was a pawn shop after all, and the weirdest things always seem to happen in places like these. Maybe it was just his way of spooking me into buying it, but there was something about the way he said it that stayed with me. Still, I wasn't one to back down from a good deal. I paid him the $20 and took the console home, not giving much thought to the warning. After all, how much trouble could an old game console really cause? When I got home, I plugged it into my TV. The console powered up with a hum, and the screen flickered to life. For a moment, everything seemed normal, just like any other game from the past. But as soon as the title screen appeared, I felt that same strange pull again, that sense that something wasn't quite right. I shrugged it off, selecting the first game on the list and settling in for what I expected would be a normal evening of nostalgia. But as the game loaded, something else loaded too. Something I didn't expect. Something I couldn't explain. The screen flickered again. Then it went black. And I heard it. A faint whisper, just barely audible over the static of the TV. Turn back. At first, I thought it was just a glitch, but the whisper kept coming, growing louder, clearer with each passing moment. Turn back. I reached for the remote to turn off the console, but before I could, The screen flashed bright, then went completely dark. And that's when it happened. The game started on its own. Without me pressing a single button, the game began, and the world on the screen came to life. But this wasn't a game. This was something else, something more real. And that's when I realized I might have made a terrible mistake. When I plugged the console into my TV and powered it on, I immediately felt off. The screen flickered with static for a moment before a simple title appeared: Echo. No logos, no copyright information, just a single word in pale, flickering text. I pressed start. The game loaded into a dimly lit hallway of what looked like an old, abandoned mansion. The walls were covered in torn wallpaper, and the wooden floor was warped, creaking under my character's steps. A chandelier above flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the walls. I had played plenty of horror games before, but something about this one felt wrong. The graphics weren't like anything I had ever seen before. They weren't pixelated, nor were they ultra realistic. Instead, they felt distorted, as if the game was constantly struggling to render itself properly. The shadows moved in strange ways, almost like they were reacting to my presence. I walked forward, my character's footsteps echoing in an unsettling way, delayed, like someone was a step behind me. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought they were just part of the background ambience, like any other horror game trying to build tension. But the longer I played, the more I realized these whispers weren't just random sound effects. They were words. Garbled, indistinct, but words nonetheless. I leaned in closer, listening. The TV flickered, and a single message appeared on the screen. Who's playing? A shiver ran down my spine. Was this some kind of weird psychological horror element? I had played games that broke the fourth wall before, but this felt different. I moved forward cautiously, turning a corner in the hallway. A tall mirror stood at the end, cracked and dirty, reflecting the dim glow of candlelight. That's when I noticed something was off. My character's reflection wasn't quite right. It stood still, slightly delayed. I pressed left. The reflection hesitated, then moved. I pressed right. Same thing, a lag that shouldn't have been there. Then the reflection did something I didn't. It tilted its head, slowly, unnaturally, as if studying me. A new message appeared. He sees you. My heart pounded. I tried backing away, but the controller didn't respond. My character was frozen in place. And then the reflection smiled. A slow, unnatural grin stretched across its face. A sound crackled through my speakers, low, distorted breathing. Not from the game, from somewhere else. I grabbed the remote, ready to shut the console off. But before I could, the screen went black, and a voice whispered clear as day, "Don't turn around." I should have stopped playing, but I didn't. At first, I convinced myself it was just a highly immersive game, one of those obscure psychological horror titles designed to mess with the player's mind. Maybe it had some kind of AI-driven voice recognition that made it seem personal. That was the logical explanation, right? But logic stopped making sense the longer I played. The mansion felt alive. Doors that were once locked now stood wide open. Hallways twisted and stretched as if the game was redesigning itself in real time. And the whispers, those faint, unintelligible murmurs, grew clearer. Then it started talking to me. Not in text, not in scripted dialogue, with a voice. At first, I thought it was just another eerie sound effect, layered into the game for atmosphere, but when I paused to take a sip of water, I heard it, clear, distinct. "Why did you stop?" I froze. The words hadn't come from the game's speakers. They had come from my headphones. Slowly, I put them back on. My heart pounded against my ribs as I listened. Nothing, just silence. I unpaused the game, and my character stood in a room I didn't remember entering. It was small, with a wooden chair and a single window overlooking nothing, just a vast black void. A table sat in the center, and on it lay an old, dusty notebook. The game prompted me to press A to inspect it. I did. The screen flickered. My blood ran cold. I hadn't entered my name anywhere. This wasn't an online game. This wasn't connected to my profile. And yet, it knew. I swallowed hard, my hands tightening around the controller. "That's weird," I muttered, forcing a chuckle. "Probably reading my system data or something." As if in response, the whispers returned. This time, they were louder, layered on top of each other, like multiple voices speaking at once. I backed out of the notebook menu, but something had changed. My character was no longer standing in the room. I was. The screen showed my bedroom. The same desk, the same chair, the same half-empty water bottle I had just taken a sip from. I stared, my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't possible. A notification popped up in the game. Turn around! My entire body stiffened. The room suddenly felt colder, the air thick and suffocating. My fingers hovered over the power button on the console, but before I could press it, the game spoke again. You can't leave. The lights in my room flickered, and then the chair behind me creaked. I spun around so fast I nearly knocked over my monitor. Nothing. Just my chair, sitting slightly askew from where I had last left it. I let out a shaky breath and turned back to the screen. The game had changed again. The in-game version of my room was darker now. The furniture warped, as if the entire place was rotting from the inside out. The walls were covered in what looked like handprints, smudged erratic, like something had been clawing at them. Another message appeared. Don't look away. I didn't want to. I didn't want to play anymore, but something kept me there. My hands wouldn't let go of the controller. The in-game camera slowly panned toward the window. I couldn't control it. And then I saw it, a figure, standing just outside my in-game window, barely visible in the darkness. It was tall, its face obscured, but its posture was unnatural, leaning forward like it was peering inside, watching me. The whispers surged again, louder. This time I could make out the words, "Let me in." I yanked the console's power cord from the wall. The screen went black. Silence. I sat there breathless, my pulse hammering against my skull. I forced myself to laugh. Okay, yeah, no, that's enough of that. But as I reached for my phone to check the time, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The screen was still on. The game was still running. The power cord was lying on the floor, completely disconnected, and yet the screen still displayed my in-game room. But it was different now. The figure was gone from the window, and the closet door, my closet door, was slightly open. The whispers started again. This time, they weren't coming from my headphones. They were coming from inside my room. I stood up so fast I nearly tripped over my chair. My breath came in shallow gasps as I backed away, staring at the closet door. It was only open a crack, but the darkness behind it felt thick. I wasn't imagining this. I knew I wasn't imagining this. Slowly, I reached out and pushed the door open. Nothing. Just my clothes. A few boxes stacked in the corner. My mind was playing tricks on me. That had to be it. I let out a shaky breath and turned back to my desk. The game had changed again. The screen showed something new. Not my in-game room. Not the mansion. But me. A grainy, low-quality video feed of me sitting at my desk, staring at the screen. I moved my hand. The figure on the screen didn't, and then it smiled. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember shutting my laptop or running out of the room. All I remember is waking up on the floor hours later, the sun rising through my window, my laptop screen black. The console was gone. The controller was gone. And when I checked the outlet, the power cord was still unplugged. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile. It wasn't my smile. It wasn't even human. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart still pounding from what had happened. My mind raced with questions. I told myself it was just a weird glitch, an elaborate mod, maybe even some hidden AI feature that was meant to make the game feel real. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't normal. I needed answers. So I did what any sane person would do. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. At first, there was nothing. No official records of the game, no mention of it in any gaming databases. The console itself was an obscure model from the late 90s, released in limited numbers and discontinued almost immediately. The few articles I found described it as a commercial failure, a forgotten relic of gaming history. But then, I found something, a forum post. It was old, buried deep in the archives of a long-abandoned gaming site. The title made my skin crawl. Do not play this game. It watches you. My stomach twisted as I clicked the link. The post was written by someone named Silent89. The date on it was from over a decade ago. I don't know how many people will see this, but if you find a console with a certain game on it, one that looks unfinished, broken, don't play it. I made that mistake. At first it seemed like a forgotten horror title. The mansion, the whispers, the way the game seemed to know things it shouldn't. But then it got worse. It started changing. showing me things, reflections that weren't mine, messages that weren't part of the script. It knew my name, my thoughts, my fears. And then it spoke to me. Not through the speakers, not through the game. It whispered in my room. My breath hitched, my hands felt ice cold. I kept reading. I tried to stop playing, but the game wouldn't let me. Every time I shut it off, it would be running again when I came back. The save files changed on their own. I'd find myself in rooms I didn't remember entering. The screen showed me, not my character, but me sitting there playing the game. The last time I played, I saw something in my reflection. It wasn't me. It smiled at me and said my name. After that, I got rid of the console, but sometimes I swear I still hear the whispers. The post ended abruptly, no responses, no follow-ups. I clicked on Silent 89's profile. Account deleted. A chill ran down my spine. This had to be a hoax, right? Some elaborate internet horror story meant to scare people like me. But it felt too real. I needed more proof. I searched for anything related to the console, the game, anything at all. And then I found it. A news article. The headline made my stomach drop. Local man missing after obsessive gaming episode. Strange circumstances surround his disappearance. I clicked on it. The article described a young man, Mark Holloway, who had become obsessed with a mysterious game he'd found at a pawn shop. Friends reported that he had stopped leaving his apartment, spending days, then weeks, glued to his screen. When they finally broke down his door, he was gone. His apartment was empty. The only thing left behind was a gaming console, still powered on. The screen displayed a single message: Player 1 has left the game. I slammed my laptop shut. My pulse pounded in my ears. I looked at the console sitting on my desk. It was still there, still waiting. For me. I should have stopped. I thought about stopping, but I didn't. I couldn't. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something clawing at my mind, whispering to me. I needed to know what the game wanted, what it was trying to show me. So against every instinct in my body, I plugged the console back in. The screen flickered to life. The game loaded. And this time, it greeted me. Welcome back, Player 2. I should have walked away. I wanted to walk away, but I didn't. The game wasn't just a game anymore. It had teeth, and it had hooks, and they were buried deep inside me. I told myself I was in control, that at any moment I could turn it off, unplug the console, throw it away. But that was a lie, because I tried, and it wouldn't let me. It started subtly, little things. I would put down the controller, get up to stretch my legs, and when I turned back, the game was still playing. My character moved on its own. At first, I told myself I had just forgotten to pause it, that maybe the controller was acting up. But the more I watched, the more I realized it wasn't random movement. It was deliberate, like someone else was playing. And then there were the reflections. I walked past the hallway mirror and saw something standing behind me, a shape, a shadow, gone when I turned. But worst of all was the voice. Not from the speakers, from my room. It whispered my name, and it laughed. One night, I made up my mind. I was done. I reached for the power button on the console. My fingers hovered over it. Just a quick press, and it would be over. But I couldn't do it. I don't mean that I hesitated. I mean I physically couldn't do it. My body froze. My arms felt like lead. And in the corner of my eye, I saw something move on the screen. Not my character. Something else. Something standing just outside the mansion door, its face obscured by shadow, watching me, waiting. And then the controller vibrated in my hands. A message appeared on the screen. Don't go. My breath caught in my throat. The words flickered, then changed. Stay and play. My hands were ice cold. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I pressed the power button anyway. The screen flickered. The game did not turn off. Instead, the screen went black, and I saw my own reflection staring back at me. Except I wasn't smiling, but it was. My reflection grinned at me. Then, without moving my lips, without my control, I heard my own voice whisper, "It's your turn now." I screamed. I yanked the console plug out of the wall, breathing hard, my entire body shaking. The screen went dark. The game was finally off, or so I thought. Because when I turned around, the reflection in the mirror was still smiling. I barely recognized myself anymore. Days blurred together. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I barely spoke to anyone. But the worst part, I wanted to play. Even when I was exhausted, even when my head ached and my eyes burned, I needed to play. And deep down, I knew I wasn't the one making that choice. The night Alex came over, I had almost forgotten what it was like to have a friend. He knocked twice before letting himself in. Dude, what the hell? His voice echoed through my apartment. You haven't answered your phone in days. I blinked at him from the couch, the controller still in my hands. I hadn't even realized I was playing. The game was still on. The haunted mansion, the endless hallways, the flickering candlelight. I looked down at the controller in my hands. My fingers were still moving. I wasn't controlling them. Alex frowned. Are you even listening? I tried to answer. I really did. But when I opened my mouth, something else spoke instead. You shouldn't have come here. The words weren't mine. The voice wasn't mine. It came from me, but it wasn't me. Alex took a step back. What the? Then his eyes landed on the screen. Wait, is that the game? He picked up the second controller. No. I tried to warn him, tried to move, but my body was locked in place. Alex sat down beside me and pressed a button. The game flashed, welcoming him inside. And that was when everything... At first, he was just playing, walking through the mansion, exploring the rooms, but the more he played, the less real he seemed. His breathing slowed, his body tensed, and then he stopped blinking. The screen flickered. A message appeared. Welcome, Alex. His lips moved. The voice that came out was not his. It was distorted, wrong, low and hollow, like a whisper crawling up from a deep, dark pit. I shuddered. Alex? He didn't look at me. He was locked in. His fingers twitched on the controller, but his face was slack, his eyes glassy. I heard a sound, a wet, crawling sound. Not from the TV, from behind me. I didn't want to turn around, but I did. And there it was, a shadow, crawling from the corner of the room, stretching, growing, reaching for me. I gasped, trying to move, but the controller held me in place. The voice on the screen laughed. The game was feeding. I didn't know how long we sat there. Hours. Days. Time didn't make sense anymore. All I knew was that Alex was no longer Alex, and I wasn't sure if I was still me. The voice whispered in our ears, over and over. Stay, play, stay, play. And the worst part? I didn't want to fight it anymore. I just wanted to obey. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my apartment anymore. The dim blue light of the TV screen was gone. So was Alex. I was standing in the game, not holding a controller, not watching from the outside. I was inside. The mansion stretched endlessly before me, the walls pulsating like they were alive. A deep, wet sound echoed through the halls, like something breathing. I took a step forward, but the floor groaned beneath me, shifting under my weight. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't meant to be here. But the game had trapped me, and now I had to find a way out. A whisper slithered through the air. You don't get to leave. I turned sharply, but there was nothing there, just shadows shifting along the corridor walls, stretching, twisting. I took a deep breath and started moving. The mansion was endless, the doors repeating, the halls looping back onto themselves like a maze designed to swallow me whole. I reached a doorway with a flickering sign above it. Final level. And beyond it, Alex. But something was wrong. He was standing there, motionless. His face was blank, eyes staring ahead, empty, like a character model waiting for an input. I stepped forward, reaching out, but the moment my fingers brushed his shoulder, his head snapped toward me. A slow, unnatural movement. His mouth curled into a smile, but it wasn't his smile. Not the real Alex. Something else was inside him, something wearing his face. And then the whisper returned, low, cold, right against my ear. Only one of you gets to leave. The walls shuddered. The game glitched. The entire world around me cracked apart like shattered glass, revealing flashes of my real apartment beyond it. The TV screen, the console, my body, sitting on the couch, eyes lifeless. I was stuck between both worlds, half in, half out, and the game was forcing me to make a choice. Alex's body twitched. Then, without warning, he lunged at me. I barely dodged, stumbling backward as he came at me again, his movements jerky and unnatural. I didn't want to fight him. I didn't want to believe he was gone. But his eyes, they weren't his anymore. They were empty. I ran, down endless hallways, through shifting doors. The game wouldn't let me go. Alex was still behind me, moving in quick, glitching bursts. 1 second at the end of the hallway, the next right behind me. I reached the only door I hadn't tried yet. A single word flashed on it: exit. I grabbed the handle. Locked. A laugh echoed through the walls. Not Alex's, not mine. The game's. Mocking me, taunting me. I banged on the door, screaming. And then I remembered. The real world. My apartment. The console. That was the only way out. The game didn't just trap players. It needed them. It fed on them. And if I didn't destroy it, it would keep us here forever. I forced myself to stop running. Turned. Alex was standing inches away, his head tilting too far to the side like a broken marionette. Behind him, the shadows moved, reaching for me. I took a deep breath and whispered, "This isn't real." The world around me flickered. For the first time, the game hesitated. I grabbed Alex by the shoulders, shaking him. "Wake up," I said. "This isn't real." For a moment, nothing happened. Then his expression shifted. His eyes flickered. Recognition. The real Alex, trapped inside. I saw his lips part like he was trying to speak, but the shadows weren't done with us yet. They lunged forward, and everything exploded. I gasped, and my eyes snapped open. I was back in my apartment, on my couch, TV screen dark, the console humming. Alex was beside me, collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. We were out. But something still felt wrong. The console, it was still running, even though I had unplugged it. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared. Final player escaped. I reached forward, hands shaking, and smashed the console with everything I had. The TV crackled, the room shook, and then silence. The game was gone. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. But just before the screen went completely black, I saw something. For a fraction of a second, a reflection. Not mine, not Alex's, but someone inside. The nightmares had stopped. The whispers were gone. Alex and I never talked about that night again. It was easier to pretend it never happened, to push it into some dark, forgotten corner of my mind. The console was destroyed. The game was gone. It had to be over. But then, one night, weeks later, I walked into my room and froze. There, sitting on my desk, was the game cartridge, perfectly intact. Like I had never broken it, like it had never left. I felt my breath hitch, my body locked in place, every instinct screaming at me to leave. But I couldn't move, couldn't look away. The cartridge was just there, waiting. The same strange symbol was etched into the plastic, deeper than before, almost glowing in the dim light. My fingers twitched at my sides. I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to be near it, but I had to know. Slowly, I reached for it. The moment my fingertips brushed against it, the TV turned on by itself. The screen flickered to life, static filling the room. And then, the game loaded. I hadn't plugged it in, I hadn't turned anything on, but the game was there, waiting for me. The main menu flickered. A single option appeared: continue, and then a voice, soft, familiar. "You will play again." The controller vibrated on the desk. My hands clenched. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I stepped back, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. But deep down, I knew. No one ever really escapes